Are you still creating OCs by throwing traumatic events at them and hoping they stick? Do you want an OC you can actually connect to and feel comfortable using? You want an OC that not only you adore, but other people will too, but don't want them to get labeled as cringe or cheesy? I'm here to help. Being a digital artist for over 10 years now, I've learned some things about OC creation. So let's talk about some of the things that can make your OC go from S tier to literal dumpster fire, because even if your design is gorgeous, the writing can ruin it almost immediately. Also, if you find this video entertaining or helpful, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. I appreciate it a lot and it helps me understand what people like to see more. Anyway, without further ado, let's just jump in to learning about OCs. The most valuable piece of information I can give you is that less is more. If you just keep throwing things at your character and adding more and more, you're gonna overcomplicate it. They don't need 10 in-depth breakups, they don't need to have like 5 million hobbies and be loved by the world and whatever. I think this was one of the hardest things for me to unlearn, because I always figured that quantity was better than quality, so I never really learned just how important it is to make your writing good. Obviously, there are some cases where more can be better, but a lot of the times, especially if your OC is for a specific world and you already have like a fandom in mind that your OC is for, then less is more. We'll use Yuki as an example here. Yuki is one of my OCs from Haikyuu, which for people who don't know is set around high schoolers who play volleyball. When creating her, I made sure not to make her stand out too much because it just wouldn't make sense and it wouldn't feel like she fit into the pre-existing world building that Haikyuu has. It would feel too complex. Instead, when I made her, I focused on three things: simplicity, privacy, and her own desires. Simplicity being her actual design and purpose. I focused on making sure she would fit into the bounds of the universe. Privacy being the parts of like herself that people would know about her. I had to focus a lot on being able to differentiate between something her friends would know and something only she knows. And that's basically how I decided how I wanted to post about her. For example, if I posted only about her trauma, it would be too open and it wouldn't really feel real, I guess. So I thought about it in the way that how would she act and how her own privacy really helps her feel like a genuine character. And it makes sure that I don't reveal too much and allows it to be interesting without overwhelming anyone. Finally, I focused on her desires. This is what she's interested in, what she wants from the future, what her feelings are on the people around her, and her preferences like hobbies, food, and favorite colors. I think being able to narrow it down really helps you focus on keeping your character to a minimum. So, not only does Yuki fit into the world, but it makes it easy to digest for someone else too. And I think that's what's so important about making an OC, just being able to digest it and understand why it exists in that world. Another thing that is really useful when creating a character that's not going to be scrapped is to get to know them. And yeah, I know they're not like a real being, but knowing things like their favorite food, family history, childhood stories, things like that really help to expand your character and kind of makes them more lovable. Another reason this one is good is because there are so many resources out there to do this. Especially on Pinterest, there are so many like get to know your OC worksheets that you can fill out. And it's not even just Pinterest, actually. Even on websites like Tumblr and Twitter, there are fun prompts you can do to get to know your OC. There's a big community out there of people who also want to make their OC more lovable, so get to know them too. It's just something super simple that really does make a big difference in the end. When getting to know your OC, it really makes you think about their story and why certain things would be meaningful for them. It also helps fill in plot holes to, like, backstories. It's especially useful for making sure everything's cohesive. Like, if I previously said Yuzuki's favorite animal is cats, then it's nice to think that she had a fun encounter with them, or that maybe on her way to school she passes a lot of cats and she thinks that they're cute. Just little things like that really help to shape your character and bring them to life. And it shows that you've really invested and put your time into thinking about how your character is and why they are that way. And people can really tell when you've put effort into something. People can tell when you've put time and thought into your character. Every good character has flaws. Every character that exists in any sort of media has something wrong with them, and that's what makes them so likable. Flaws are so important to characters. They make or break them. They make them relatable, give purpose to them, and can even be their downfall at the end of the story. It's one of the things people struggle to get right, though. A lot of people, when just starting out with the OCs, decide very basically that the characters probably aren't good with people, that they're shy or clumsy, and those are fine, but when it comes down to it, they're not really flaws that have any depth to them. They almost feel like placeholders. I think a good way to ensure your character has some meaningful flaws is to kind of reverse the good traits. For example, if your character is smart and wants to be the best at everything, make them a perfectionist, make them struggle with wanting to get things exactly right, make them overthink what they're doing. If your character is gold-hearted and wants to make the best out of every situation, make them too trusting. Make them aware that there are bad people, but also make them not truly understand the concerns of people around them. If your character's ambitious, make them a little manipulative, make them a little apathetic to others because their goals are important to them. They'll do anything to get to that. I think the best way to think of character traits is like cause and effect, or I guess in coding terms, an if statement. Like, if your character is a loving person, then maybe make them too loving, almost to the point of overbearing or obsession. You kind of want to think about the why, especially when it comes to characters. The why is always the most useful thing to think about when it comes to it, because even in real life, everybody has a reason of doing something. You know, you eat because you're hungry, you eat because you're bored, you play games because you're bored. You play games because they're fun. You watch TV because it gives you some information. It gives you something to do. You know, you do art because you enjoy it. It's just giving characters that why is what brings them to life. Another thing when it comes to flaws is consistency. For example, if in your character's past something traumatic occurred, then there should be repercussions to said trauma. Maybe a severe phobia of some kind, maybe something that affects how they are around others, but they can't be traumatized and not go through therapy and come out okay. It just doesn't make for a relatable or well written character, especially when dealing with topics that are harsh and come with trauma. It's important to be able to portray that trauma well rather than just making them shy or whatever, because they're not just going to be shy, they're going to have genuine fears and problems to overcome. And I think that's what makes a character great, is that when it's written well, you can tell that they're struggling for a reason and not just because the author has made them struggle. Now that we've talked about the negative, it's important to talk about the main sustenance to your character. Why should people like them? What's so important about your character that people should want to root for them? Can you empathize with your character? Are they someone that people can relate to or find themselves in? Are they someone that people naturally look to as a leader? Do you want to root for them because they're the underdog? Are they so different from reality that they allow people to escape the boredom of everyday lives? People often choose their favorite characters based on how well they can relate to or empathize with them, and you should do the same for your OCs. You should think about what you want people to feel for your OC. Do you want them to use your OC as a form of escapism? Do you want them to think of your OC as a romantic interest? It's answering these type of questions that will really set your character apart from other people's. And finally, we can't talk about OCs without talking about designs. This is something a lot of people struggle with. You don't have to be an artist to design your OC or to visualize your character. There's lots of ways to bring your character to life and create their appearance. There are the obvious options like commissioning people who do draw to draw for you, and avatar makers like Picru, but you can also make Pinterest boards, which are a great way to get a basic idea and sense of your OC's appearance. Another great way is writing about them, and it really does help create a strong visual of your character. There are so many ways you can go about creating a design for your OC. Another option is Photoshop, collaging images together to create an OC. When it comes to the actual design of your OC, I think the common rule is to just try and make it make sense. Just really think about why they look the way they do. Don't just add things to their appearance, because give it a reason. For example, if they're a high schooler, don't just randomly add dyed hair and piercings. Most schools have a dress code against that. If they're rebellious, then it kind of makes sense and you can kind of explain it, and that's totally fine, but just make sure that there's a reason for why. If they work in a construction site, they should, you should think about the PPE that they'd wear. Their fashion should be affected by not only their personality, but their everyday lives, their occupations, Somebody who, works at an office all day shouldn't be wearing something that's going to affect their ability to sit comfortably for hours on end. And I think little things like that really do help your character feel like an actual person. Now, I know that I said finally for the last one, but I do have some quick fire bonus advice to share that I think is pretty helpful and important. So, First one, it helps to have a purpose or reason for making your OC. I have talked about this a lot in the video, but if you're making them just to make one, it might feel forced or awkward. Reasons for making OCs can vary, but some of them could be, for OC shipping, self-inserting, just having an interest in the world build and wanting to imagine from a unique perspective, wanting to explore new parts about something. Another thing is that you should make sure your character is consistent in how they handle things and ensure that they have some form of direction, some sense of purpose. They don't have to have everything figured out right away, but they should have some sense of stability in their lives. They should have something to drive forwards for. Reference sheets are good, but they're not always necessary. There are other ways to keep track of your OCs, like writing it down in notebooks or having a small PowerPoint. My best advice is to make something from the thing that you love and just start there. Incorporate bits of yourself into your OCs. Make them someone you'd want to be friends with. And overall, just create them. At the end of the day, it's your OC, and as long as you love it, who cares if it's cringe or cheesy? If you want them to be flawed, then make them. If you want them to be perfect, then do that. At the end of the day, OCs are supposed to be fun and enjoyable, and if you don't enjoy your OC, then you're doing something wrong. I hope you found this video useful or entertaining, and I'd love to see your OCs and hear about them, so feel free to tell me about them in the comments or at me on any of my social media below. I actually really enjoy being a part of the art community, and it makes me so happy to see all the effort that goes into creating something that people genuinely care for. I hope you all enjoyed watching this video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye!